is a walker, though I'm sure there once was another name for it. An Indian name lost when the Europeans devoured the New World. Maybe my father could have told me what it was if he hadn't died in a car wreck before he knew my mother was pregnant. So all I know is what the werewolves could tell me, which wasn't much. The walker comes from the skinwalkers of the Southwest Indian tribes, but I have less in common with a skinwalker, at least from what I've read, than I do with the werewolves. I don't do magic. I don't need a coyote skin to change shape. And I'm not evil. I sipped my juice and looked out of the kitchen window. I couldn't see the moon herself, just her silver light that touched the nighttime landscape. Thoughts of evil seemed somehow appropriate while I waited for the vampire to come for me. If nothing else, it would keep me from falling asleep. Fear has that effect on me. I'm afraid of evil. In our modern world, even the word seems old-fashioned. When it comes out of hiding briefly in a Charles Manson or a Jeffrey Dahmer, we try to explain it away with drug abuse, an unhappy childhood, or mental illness. Americans in particular are oddly innocent in their faith that science holds explanations for everything. When the werewolves finally admitted what they were to the public several months ago, the scientists immediately started looking for a virus or bacteria that could cause the change, magic being something their laboratories and computers can't explain. Last I'd heard, Johns Hopkins had a whole team devoted to the issue. Doubtless they'd find something, too. But I'm betting they'll never be able to explain how a 180-pound man turns into a 250-pound werewolf. Science doesn't allow for magic any more than it allows for evil. The devout belief that the world is explainable is both a terrible vulnerability and a stout shield. Evil prefers it when people don't believe. Vampires, as a not random example, seldom go out and kill people in the street. When they go hunting, they find someone who won't be missed and bring them home where they are tended and kept comfortable, like a cow in a feedlot. Under the rule of science, there are no witch burnings allowed, no water trials or public lynchings. In return, the average, law-abiding, solid citizen has little to worry about from the things that go bump in the night. Sometimes I wish I were an average citizen. Average citizens don't get visited by vampires. Nor do they worry about a pack of werewolves, at least not quite the same way as I was. Coming out in public was a bold step for the werewolves, one that could easily backfire. Staring out at the moonlit night, I fretted about what would happen if people began to be afraid again. Werewolves aren't evil, but they aren't exactly the peaceful, law-abiding heroes that they're trying to represent themselves as either. Someone tapped on my front door. Vampires are evil. I knew that, but Stefan was more than just a vampire. Sometimes I was pretty sure he was my friend, so I wasn't really afraid until I opened the door and saw what waited on my porch. The vampire's dark hair was slicked back, leaving his skin very pale in the moon's light. Dressed in black from head to heels, he ought to have looked like a refugee from a bad Dracula movie. But somehow the whole outfit, from black leather duster to silk gloves, looked more authentic on Stefan than his usual bright-colored t-shirt and grubby jeans, as if he'd removed a costume rather than put one on. He looked like someone who could kill as easily as I could change a tire, with as little thought or remorse. Then his mobile brows climbed his forehead, and he was suddenly the same vampire who'd painted his old VW bus to look like Scooby's Mystery Machine. "You don't look happy to see me," he said with a quick grin that didn't show his fangs. In the dark, his eyes looked more black than brown. But then, so did mine. "Come in." I backed away from the door so he could. Then, because he'd scared me, I added snappishly, "If you want welcoming, try stopping by at a decent hour." He hesitated on the threshold, smiled at me, and said, "By your invitation." Then he stepped inside my house. "That threshold thing really works?" I asked. His smile widened again. This time I saw a glint of white. "Not after you've invited me in." He walked past me and into the living room, and then turned like a model on a runway. The folds of his duster spread out with his turn.